you use the terms things came crashing down.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's a story there.
Oh yeah, there's this is foreshadowing why I have such a heart for helping men today,
Okay.
because my story should be a cautionary tale.
Okay.
In the sense of I tried to do it all on my own and I felt confident in all these things, and in reality I was just a scared little boy acting like a man. And so I had started dating my wife prior to my deployment. We stayed together over my deployment, got married, as soon as I came home. Is the whole fairy tale thing, military wedding and your dress blues and the saber arch and all that kind of stuff. And life was pretty good. We were both excited, newlyweds. I was at the top of my game in terms of my profession. I'd been moved into a platoon leader position, so I was responsible for 30 guys. Loved what I did, and things were good. And then, very long story short, is my wife and I both have pretty difficult childhoods. Mm-hmm. Hers probably worse than mine, but mine was very emotionally manipulative, through the divorce and everything. And so it really kind of crippled me emotionally. I was essentially stuck as a teenager trying to go through life when you need to be a man about it, So when we decided we want to start a family, just timing wise, hey, we're gonna have some downtime. I'm probably not gonna deploy. Let's start a family. My wife had a very difficult birth process. I mean, she was in labor for 50 plus hours.
Oh, wow.
Really long time. So just from the get-go, she was already just depleted.
Yeah.
Her body physically was just spent. And this really was kind of the catalyst for us to all of our past kind of came to a head, right? Both of us. And, she really, really, really struggled with severe postpartum. And I won't go into the details of that because that's her story to tell. But there was hospital stints and stuff. It was really, really intense. And so I was totally caught off guard by this. And I had this ridiculous attitude of oh, she's doing this to me. There was this selfish, vindictive attitude I had of she's not a good enough mother, that I need to go to work and I'm in the Army and all this kind of stuff, and she's killing my career, and just all these really negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And again, that's what a selfish teenager would say, not a man. And so at a time in my life when my wife needed her husband to be supporting her and caring for her and protecting her, I essentially gave her the exact opposite. And then again, fast forwarding, I pulled the trigger on getting out of the Army because I don't think we can survive staying on active duty. Because for those who aren't aware, it's a very demanding lifestyle, and it requires a lot of the family, not just the service member.
Okay.
Where it kind of demands your life. Mm-hmm. You live it daily, and so does the family. You're gone a lot, they have to pick up a lot. There's a lot that goes into being a military family. And I was I just don't think we can make it with everything we're dealing with right now. So we got out, and I thought that would be a good move for us, and that it would somehow make it easier to work through the issues. But it actually just made it worse. So we got out, moved to Texas. I got this job in corporate America thinking, oh, it'll be great now. I can stay home more. I'll make more money, all that kind of stuff. But really what happened then is the one thing that made me feel confident and secure and was my identity was gone.
Yeah.
And so then the worst of me just came to the surface.
Okay.
And all that stuff that I never dealt with or was just blind to, I started acting like that. And we separated. I had a lawyer on retainer to divorce her. And it got to the point where I was so selfish and so angry that I started cheating on her. Mm. And so, I just got to this point where I was looking at myself in the mirror who am I? What? I don't believe in what I'm doing. I know this is wrong. Why am I doing this? And so started a very long road of making amends and a lot of growth on myself, mm-hmm. therapy, counseling, all kinds of stuff. Just to name a few, I went to this place called Onsite here in Tennessee.
Oh, I'd never heard of that until yesterday.
Okay.
And I was out for dinner with someone, and it got mentioned multiple times.
It's pretty, they founded the concept of experiential therapy.
Okay.
So you go in with a group of people. And so my wife and I went together once, and then we both went individually. Okay. And in reality, we should have done it the other way. You should go individually first and then as a couple. But I learned a lot. So it was very helpful. I learned a lot about why I was the way I was, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, this is the reason that, this is the undealt thing. That helped a lot, but it was still very it wasn't actionable enough, And so I was still really struggling to actually be a better man, mm-hmm. make amends for all of my mistakes and flaws. And then I went to this place called Mighty Oaks. which is founded by Chad Robichaux. He was a Marine Force Recon guy, and they're all over the country, but I went to the one in California, and that was the first place where I finally, for the first time in my life, owned my crap, like for real. Like there was no blaming anyone else. There was no excuses anymore. It was, nope, this is what I've done, and I'm solely responsible for it. For me, what it was is because it's all veterans and first responders there.
Okay.
And, there was guys who had done some really hard stuff. I looked up to these guys in my group, and them sharing their stories and talking about their struggles, I realized, like, wow, I've just been making excuses for myself. And so that really was the shift in me, where it was also God too, right? It's a Christian organization, and it was the first time that I really surrendered to him too, with like, okay, Lord, I've been trying to tough my way through this and willpower my way through this. Obviously it's not working. Yeah. And I'm obviously pretty stubborn because I refused to admit that until now. But I basically just laid it all down, was like, help me, God. You're in control. And, whatever you want from me is what I need to do. So, again, lots to unpack here, but, my wife and I did decide to reconcile. She gave me grace for all of my indiscretions. And, it's been a long journey to heal from that. But I almost destroyed my entire life simply because I was, one, trying to do it on my own. I isolated myself from all of the types of men who would tell me, no, dude, what are you doing? Stop. Yeah. Why don't we talk about that? Like I kind of did that on purpose to myself. And that kind of victimhood mentality, oh, she's doing this to me. Oh, because she did this, then I'll do that, And man, I look back on it with just like such shame about who I used to be. And I know how bad that hurts to be in that place. And so that's why, like, fast forward to today, this is why I've literally made it my profession to help men not be me, to stop it before we get to that point, because I know how disastrous it can be. And thankfully, I'll just close here with, a lot of people will ask, like, well, how could your wife forgive you for that? How could she possibly, do that for you? And the answer is God, one. Obviously, he worked through her to allow her to have grace for me. And it's not like we just magically fixed everything. I mean, we've been married almost 11 years now. Okay. And, this happened when we'd been married like 3 years. Mm-hmm. So it's been a long road. But the beauty of healing and the beauty of grace is that through this horrible thing that I did to my wife, the ultimate betrayal, and I can never take it back. This is forever something I've done. God has brought about such a gift that I don't know if I'd ever have experienced grace to that level ever, or ever will. You know what I mean? Because he was able to work through her and allow her to have that patience for me, we have the life we have today. I mean, my daughter's 9. We have worked very hard, both of us, to change kind of generational curses, to rewrite the story of our family. Mm-hmm. And, people ask me like what my legacy is. It's that my daughter will never deal with the things that we dealt with. And, so that's a lot of ground to cover there. I'm sure you got a lot of questions, but at a very high level, that's kind of my, all of my flaws and mistakes, and why I'm so passionate about men taking ownership today, because if you don't, this is what happens. Yeah. Like, I'm just one of many tales of men not owning up and taking action.
By the millions, if not the billions.
Yeah. And so we got to change it. So that's,
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to go, I'm curious to know what was at the root of it for you, do you think? I'm assuming it's, childhood stuff, maybe things with your parents, but when you said that you sort of worked through your stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can go as deep as you want, by the way.
What is that stuff? What is that? Yeah. What is that baggage? What is it that I'm trying to draw the connection between
Definitely.
The past and then?
And we can go as deep as you want.
Yeah, cool.
Everything's on the table.
Okay, cool.
With me personally, number one, I was exposed to pornography very early, like 9 years old, 10 years old, something like that.
How?
Internet, magazines, baseball buddies, found their dad's Playboy and stuff. And obviously we have a lot more data on this now and like what it does to the brain, but it's nothing good.
Yep.
So, I was massively addicted to that basically my whole life. And the military's no better. Military's no, you deploy and you everyone gives their hard drives around and shares everything they got for deployment because you don't have internet, Yeah, it was a humongous demon in my life. I've still struggled with it even up to just recently. And I think every man has kind of a thing they struggle with, and that was mine.
Sure.
So obviously that leads to very distorted ways already of thinking about sex, love, relationships, all of it, very messed up. Then you couple that with, through my parents' divorce, well, I'll back up a little bit, very intense household, right? Everything is life and death. If you don't do it perfectly, you're wrong. And it's just everything is high stress. Okay. So we walked on eggshells all the time.
You got siblings?
Yeah, so I'm the oldest. I have a younger brother who's 2.5 years younger, and then a younger sister who's 5 years younger. Very intense household. Arguments are very intense. Everything's just to the max. In a lot of ways, it was really good because I'm a very hard worker, very disciplined, all that kind of stuff. But that's not healthy. Sure. No one, no healthy relationships exist in that kind of vacuum like that. But when they divorced, when they started splitting up, and all the divorce with my parents. Because I was the oldest, information was overshared to me. And my mother, and I want to say this, I know my parents are both just hurt people. I'm not mad at them. I hold no ill will to them. And this was part of my journey too, was letting this go, yes. Right? So I don't say any of these things I'm about to say to wound them. I just want that to be clear to people listening that I want to share this because I don't think people realize how pervasive this problem is. And the term clinically is called emotional or covert incest. And it's when a parent talks to a child in a way that is to satisfy the parent's emotional needs, almost like it would be a girlfriend-boyfriend type of situation.
Got it.
And so as you can imagine, that creates a very distorted view also of relationships and boundaries when you're a child and your parent is essentially making you their emotional outlet and sharing intimate details of things that no parent should ever talk to their child about. Go talk to a friend. If I was struggling, hey, Zuby, I need to talk to you about my marriage. Okay, man, you can take it because you're a grown-ass man, whereas your child cannot. So that happened to me a lot. And that one was one I didn't even realize that was a problem until later in life when I had started making all of these mistakes. I had already been cheating on my wife. I owned up to my counselor first. I was like, I am a horrible human. I don't even know where to start fixing things. And she's like, well, you need to read this book called Silently Seduced. I think that's probably what happened to you. And I read that book and it was whoa, that was a lot to unpack because it made me realize how basically my whole childhood was not healthy. And to kind of be in the dark about that and then have the realization of it, it was like running into a brick wall. It was whoa, the awareness of it really hit me. And I struggled for 6 months. It was a long process to
Can you give a quick overview of the book because I haven't heard about it?
So it basically walks through different vignettes of ways in which emotional manipulation plays into emotional incest and how it damages. It's particularly, this happens mostly with mothers and sons.
Okay.
Just anecdotally, that's what I've seen. The book is written that way. So I know people are going to get all upset about me for saying that, but it seems to be the reality of the situation. So I'm not attacking women. It's kind of like the Oedipus complex thing where it's damaging to a young male brain. And so womanizing and pornography and all these kinds of things are actually pretty typical responses to that type of damage. And then there's another book called Healing the Wounded Heart by Dan Allender, where he spends an entire chapter on this topic as well. And he generally equates what happens in the brain is similar to actual sexual abuse or assault. And so I'm not equating my experience to that for victims of that because I know people who have suffered that. But the way that our brains try to protect itself is very similar. And it's not healthy, right? You're in total fight or flight response your entire life. So everything you're walking into. So the way that manifested as a husband was anytime my wife had an emotional issue, it meant she was attacking me. So then George gets really big and angry because the only way to defend myself is to fight. And so I was the worst possible husband that she could get in such a situation when in reality what's happening is she's my wife and she's coming to me because she's emotionally distressed by something, and I'm the one person who can cover her and help her with that.
Yeah.
And I failed to recognize that for a very long time, to my regret. But that was kind of the two big things, was the pornography coupled with the emotional manipulation, and how they kind of swirled together to make this, kind of this shadow hanging over me.